Greetings, friends, and welcome to part 2 of the minecart build. Last video, we did this entire lower carriage of the train because those wheels took forever. That was a big job in itself. This video, we're going to be doing the top, and if all goes according to plan, the tracks that goes underneath this as well. Regardless, I don't think it's going to be part 3, but we'll see on how things go. Because, you know, it's one of those matters where you will see me quickly put it together, but in reality, there's a lot of work sometimes on some of this stuff. So, right behind you, or right behind the piece of paper here, you can see the end cap. Now, what these are just 2x6s cut down at 10-degree angles, and the measurements in the template will be stated as the top measurement on each one. So, 18, 20, 22, 24. It works out perfect at a 10-degree angle that is your cut. You will get these down to the exact shape and size that you need. Now, you have an option of just leaving it like this. Make sure to sand it because you're going to be doing vinegar work on this and it doesn't like it otherwise. So you're going to sand it, but you also have the option of chamfering this edge. And you can do it with a palm sander, you can do it with a hand planer. You could do it with a knife if you're careful, or you can say hello to my little friend. And this is a handheld planer. And it makes short work of chamfering these edges. It's really nice. Anyways, oh, speaking of that, thank you, Brian, because he's the one that gave that to me. And up here, you're going to see that I've got 2 marks in. This is 4 inches from the bottom, and then 5 inches across. Same thing on both sides. This will give you a little fun tip at the top side, and it just makes it look more, personable. Then finally, you're going to need 2x4s at 19 inches, and what these are going to be is, these are going to be the vertical supports for the actual cart side. This actually came after. These are normally on the inside, but then as I was building, I'm like, that would look a lot cooler on the outside. So that's where it ended up. You can chamfer these again. You just want them to make them look cool. And you are going to end up with something like this. You're going to have to excuse the camera bouncing here. Oh. This thing's becoming a dead weight very quickly. You see now the verticals are in. These edges are really chamfered because I like the way it gives that look of like these boards are aged and they weren't a perfect edge. Top is all cut down. Everything is in place. This I pre-drilled and then put the screws through because you can. I use drywall screws and it's all glued underneath. It just gives extra strength to make sure this whole thing holds together because you can put glue between these slats. It's an odd shape to hold together and, without any fancy kind of wood techniques, this is the cleanest way to do it and it looks good. So anyways, once you've got this first one built, you do the good old Lego exercise instructions and you get a ×2. I'm going to put it right down there. ×2. You're going to build a second one of these. I'll be back after they're all built and we'll start talking about assembly. Now we're on to the easier part. Before you is the boards for the outside of the cart. These are 36 inches long and I did a chamfer on all 4 sides on the part that's exposed, and then the part that's hidden on the inside, I only chamfer 2 edges because I want this to be flush against the side of the cart so I'm not fighting it at all. Then make sure, once again, going to sound like a broken record by the end of this video, make sure you sand these. I'm actually going to be putting on my vinegar mix to paint this before I assemble it. That way I make sure I get in all these gaps and the such with the vinegar. So when I spray it with the tea, I get that beautiful colored patina. And yeah, anyways, gonna get all these done. I'm going to assemble it and I'll show you just how everything lines up. All right, the cart is coming together, and when you go to put the 2x6s on the side, I'm using 3.5-inch deck screws to do this. Just make sure you split the difference between the top and the bottom because this angle is technically more than 5.5 inches. That'll get you to the point that you're putting all these on, and you can see how those chamfers turned out really good, and it makes the whole cart look pretty darn skookum. Now, the bottom, as a heads up, same 2x6 by 36 inches. If this is exposed to weather,
You do not want that bottom to be completely solid because water will have nowhere to drain and it'll rot it out so quick it'll make your head spin. So all you want to do is make sure you have it set up, or if you do drill a couple holes in it so it has somewhere for water to pretty much drain to. This shouldn't be too watertight because I believe there's no gap down. Look at that. Yeah, see, water is going to pool in here and any amount of dirt's going to fill in that gap. So leave a gap in the bottom if you can, especially if you're putting other stuff and you're like, I think I'm going to be putting flowers in this. So I have to make sure that it doesn't have that problem. Now, this final spot here is a smaller than a 2x6 because of that angle that I cut. So what you want to do is you're going to walk over to the other side of my garage area here. You're going to use another 2x6. You're going to cut it down to 4 inches, chamfer all the edges like we did before. But then the piece that you take off are going to be something about this. It's like 1.5. And what these will become will be the bumpers. So once these get all dried and stained, I'm going to attach them. And what it does is it hides all of these end caps and just makes it look a little bit better. Okay, well, going to continue on assembling this thing and see you after. Onto the rails. Now, these are actually really straightforward. What we're going to start with is just a full 8-foot 2x4. This is based on the fact that you're doing the cart as solo. If you're going to do more, you might want to keep the 2x4 8 feet. So what we're going to do is we're going to rip the 2x4 into 3 segments. A 1 inch, a 1 inch, and then whatever's left over is going to be the top rail of the actual track. So we'll put the top rail, 1 second. You also want to chamfer the edge of the top rail and quickly do a quick chamfer on the bottom rail here. Just makes it look more train trackish. And what we're going to do is we're going to flip this up side down. The next layer goes on top. You can mark this if you want, or you can just eyeball it to about halfway. No one's ever going to notice it for what you're going to do. Line up your ends. So then the final one, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to flip it horizontal this time. And you're going to end up with a profile that looks something like that. It kind of looks like a train track. I used a countersink bit to just get through this a tiny bit because you want to use deck screws. And the thing about the deck screws, especially if you've been using the same ones, you can see, actually, you know what, looking at that, I don't need to countersink it. So yeah, just put it straight in from the bottom to the top. So the top rail stays intact so no water gets in the holes that you're drilling with the hole. So water doesn't get in the screw holes that you're actually putting in. Then all you're going to do is put in 4 screws as you go along. It'll get it all bound up beautifully and you'll end up with something that looks like this. Our lovely little rail. Okay, then I'm going to be painting these things with the brown enamel that I did before. Wherever it is, it's not within range. Brown enamel, and then I'm going to hit them very light with some silver spray paint just to make them look like steel. But I want it to look like old rusted steel. So whenever you do that, make sure the top is more shiny than the sides are because that is where the wear is. I'm going to get this screwed together and we're going to use some of this here. The rattiest 2x4 that you can possibly find. That's going to become our sleepers. Don't have to have good wood. If you don't have access to an old piece of wood lying around, get some pressure treated because this is the part of the build that's going to sit on the wet ground and it's going to rot out. And this I really don't care if it rots out. Anyways, see you in a few.
Now, you can see that the rail is on and pretty much I just did a brown coat and then a light silver paint like I mentioned before. Now, the sleepers, I only put 2 screws into this one and that one down there to keep the whole thing square. And then I just did a single screw in each of those. And what I did is I put down the board in a 5.5 inch space, which is a 2x6, and use it to space it all out. And then those marks on the inside you use to put where the rail goes. And you end up with a pretty convincing looking rail. You know, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. If you don't have access to all of the saw to the long rip, you can just use a vertical 2x4. No one's going to notice. I might notice, but no judgment. Do the rail that you have access to. This works as well as would a 2x4 work. This just kind of looks a bit more authentic. Anyways, so now this is where we are here. other than, suddenly the explosion of flowers at the top, because turning this into a planter, and yeah, I'm not done it yet, and it's turning into a planter. How the heck does that happen? So anyways, now what we're going to do is we're going to swing around to the back, and here I'm going to do some metal strapping. So I'm going to go show you how to go about this. This is now all extra stuff. Everything else we're doing from this point on just means that it weathers not as good. So if you want it to weather longer, don't do this next step. Just end it here. But anyways, we're going to continue. All right, we are doing some strapping now. First thing you're going to need is 3/8 inch wide wood. I just took a scrap piece of wood that I had, and using my table saw, I milled it down into 3/8 inch pieces. And you're going to need 4 of them, one for each vertical. Now over here, you will see how this actually looks, but I'm going to use this one here. So what I did is I measured on my actual cart, because depending on how those 2x6s end up, you might end up with a little bit different. I put this against my cart, and I marked it on the way up on those gaps to make sure that where these bolts are going to go, that they end up in the right spots. See, because I got the bottom here. This overshoots a tiny bit. I wasn't going to put this on, but I decided I wanted it on. I'm going to have to see how it works out in the end. I think it's going to work fine. Once again, learning as I go. Then what I did is marking at 1.25 inches from each edge. I put in just a pencil mark, and then 3/4 of an inch in will give me my center. And then I promptly fully ignored them when I went and drilled on my... It's not completely off. It's just some of them decided to wander a little bit because I didn't pre-punch it. And then I used a Forstner bit to drill all those holes just a little bit down, so it makes sure that it's going to hold in, because this is all outdoors. I didn't want to... It probably would be fine because I'm painting it all, but I'm going to be putting glue in here, and then I'm going to use some 3/4 inch dowel, which that's a 3/4 inch Forstner, by the way. And then I cut this down to, what was it? Let's see here. I'm going to say 3/8 of an inch as well. No, it's a little bit more, just about 1/2 inch. Then, using this here, I went and onto my sander, I knocked all the tops off very aggressively to make it look like it's a rivet. And then I just pretty much build it so it goes into there. And look at that one. See? Half drunk. I don't know why the heck that one ended up the way it did, but it's going to bug me every single time I see it. It's character, right? It's character. That's what it is. Anyways, all I did is using these 1/2 inch pieces, I sanded the tops, and then I'm going to stick them in. Now, there's another extra reason why I'm doing it like this. This top one is going to be so I can screw it to the actual cart, and then this goes on over top of the screw. Same with the bottom. That'll hold it in beautifully. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to build 4 of these. Oh, just one more notice. The top one, you don't want to do double because it's going to end right at the very top. Just do a single. I did 1/4, 1 1/4, and then just rounded the edges. So when it goes together, it just looks that little bit nicer, and then the top of the wood is not right there. So I'm going to go through, do a whole bunch of cutting, whole bunch of sanding. I'm going to get these done and painted with the same brown, and then I'll come back and talk about the aging them up and assembling them and sticking them on. Anyway, see you in a bit. Just a quick little update. This is the bands that are all done. All I did was put the brown base coat on, put a hammered bronze over top, and then using a little bit of burnt sienna, I did some rusting. I don't know how this is going to age outside. I'm kind of doing a test here to see how it lasts. What I did is when I spray painted, I made sure the paint was still sticky and not completely set when I started putting the burnt sienna on. And hopefully it'll set the color a lot better. It actually looked pretty good. Just wanted to go over one extra thing that I did while I was working on this. On the back, I drilled through with an extra drill these 2 end caps, and these are not glued in. But I painted them in. That's exactly why. I drilled them through so I can take a nail and push that cap out to get to the screw. But I painted them in place. So when I suggest you go put these on,
You do them one at a time, pop the cap, screw it on, so you keep where it was. It shouldn't be that big of an issue, but regardless, just a small consideration. The only other thing I did is I put a little piece of wood on the back. This is 1.25 inches long, and just sanded it down. And what this does is when it goes onto the box, if it wants to stay vertical for me, this just follows the curve. So when it's going up, this bottom piece doesn't stick out. Very small. You can do this or not. It's up to you. Anyways, I'm going to go start attaching these things, and I'll show you how it looks when they're all done.
Now, you can see that the metal straps are all installed. And like I said, this top one hides the screw in behind that holds it all in place. Comes together pretty well, and you can see how that bottom part there, hopefully you can catch it in the shadows, how it matches up with that base just to hide that gap a little bit. I added a bit of the rust to the wheels because I liked it to match this trim, and that brings our train track and everything to its successful conclusion. And I love how this thing turned out. And you see it's already been purposed into exactly what I built it for, which was a planter. And then for Halloween, I can put other stuff in this. It's kind of like a year-round prop that you don't have to store away. It can just look good regardless of the season that you have it out in. Regardless, thank you so much for hanging out in this 2-part video on this really strange and cool train cart. I think it turned out pretty awesome. And it should weather really well. I'll keep you updated as time goes along, but it's pointing to it should be good. And the look and feel of this thing is great. If you built like a row of 3 of these with 12 feet of track, it would look so fantastic. And big thank you to all my viewers, all my subscribers. A big thanks to my patrons who throw me a little bit each month to ensure that I can keep doing stuff like this. Remember, like, subscribe, and all that. It'd be greatly appreciated. It helps push these videos out to more people and allows me to continue to build craziness like this. Regardless, have a good one all.